Recently, ANYPony had posted a challenge to all his watchers about explaining all the coincidences that we see in the first two episodes of MLP. More specifically, he wanted to hear someone explain about Twilight's timing on seeking out the legend of Nightmare Moon, finding exactly 5 other ponies who would want to befriend her, who also turn out to be the elements of harmony, who stick together and help Twilight on her journey despite not having been friends beforehand, and then how the main 6 come across 5 challenges that showcase each of the elements they represent, and finally how Celestia seems to have so much trust in Twilight in stopping Nightmare Moon. Well, I had been thinking about putting out a review on each of the episodes for MLP, and I guess this is the kind of thing that gets me to writing. So at the very least, I'll have to thank ANYPony for getting my creative spark going. Like many other people, I was not introduced to MLP by watching the first 2 episodes. I started watching elsewhere in the series through the recommendations of others, and then felt intrigued enough by what I had seen to go back to the beginning of the show. And honestly, I'm glad that I did. I can agree with ANYPony that there are a great many coincidences in these first 2 episodes, and that might have been enough to turn me off to watching anything else in the series had I not started watching other episodes first. But having seen the entire series and now coming back to where it all started, my mind began coming up with ideas on how all these coincidences could fit together. I had actually already come up with possible explanations to some of these coincidences. In my Hopes for Season 4 and Beyond Part 1 video, I had talked about some ideas that I had hoped to see in the future for MLP. And even though there are all kinds of reasons why these ideas may never work on a show like MLP, I do think that these theories can help explain parts of the first 2 episodes of the show. I'm about to get into some deep headcanon, so if you haven't seen my previous video on this topic, I would highly recommend that you check that out first. Otherwise, many of the topics that I'll be getting into won't make any sense. I'll post a link in the description. When the episode begins, we see that Twilight Sparkle is reading a book about the legend of Nightmare Moon, something that I would be willing to bet that Celestia had requested Twilight to read. And this story also gets her curious about the elements of harmony. After a little more research, Twilight is convinced that the legend is true and that Princess Celestia should be warned about the danger. And after a few moments, Spike receives a response saying that Twilight should be heading off to Ponyville to help with setting up the Summer Sun celebration, and more specifically, make some friends. This response from Celestia came rather quickly, almost as if she already had it written out. Celestia's instructions include meeting up with 5 other ponies who are in charge of specific tasks for the celebration. And though Twilight wasn't intending on making friends, each of the ponies that she meets finds a reason to want to spend time with her. Both Pinkie Pie and Applejack have a very welcoming personality. Rainbow Dash enjoyed a good laugh with Twilight, making her want to hang out some more. Rarity learns that Twilight comes from Canterlot, which is a big part of Rarity's dream for the future. And even with Fluttershy, she becomes ecstatic when seeing Spike for the first time. In the next episode, when Nightmare Moon first makes her appearance, Twilight is desperately trying to find some clues about the elements of harmony when the rest of the main 6 arrive to investigate. They discover what the elements represent and that their last known location is deep within the Everfree Forest. When Twilight wants to go into the forest alone, the rest of the main 6 are unwilling to allow it. Now, the fact that all of them seem willing to brave the dangers of the Everfree Forest does seem a bit much. But I don't find it too hard to believe that most of them would understand the threat of eternal night and would want to do anything to save Princess Celestia. Coming to the trials of the main 6, though, it becomes a little harder to explain. Each of their challenges allowed for them to show the elements they represented. Now, I suppose that this would be hard to believe if Nightmare Moon is causing all these events and if she also understood how the elements worked. But it becomes quite apparent later on that Nightmare Moon is completely surprised when Twilight is able to present the elements of harmony. Considering this fact, we can see these events as just Nightmare Moon trying to stop the main 6 from reaching the castle, even to the point of attempting to kill them with collapsing the cliff and enraging the Manticore. And even Twilight did not realize that these events were showing the elements that her friends represented until that pivotal moment inside the castle ruins. So, when Twilight Sparkle ignites the elements of harmony and returns Princess Luna to her former self, Princess Celestia makes her appearance. And the very first thing she says to Twilight is, "I knew you could do it," and that she knew that Twilight had the magic inside to defeat her. And of course, this raises a whole lot of questions. If Princess Celestia knew that Nightmare Moon was returning, why didn't she do anything about it? If she was trusting in Twilight to unlock the elements of harmony, how could she have known that the main six would come to represent the elements? Why would she entrust the safety of all the kingdom in her as of yet untested student? This is where my previous headcanon ideas come in, which again, you should take a look at if you want to understand any of this next part. I had come up with a theory about Twilight Sparkle going back in time to meet with one of her idols, Star Swirl the Bearded, and also suggesting the possibility of her meeting with the royal sisters before they had come to power. Now, if Princess Celestia had met with Twilight in the ancient past, then she may also have learned about Twilight becoming the element of magic when she defeated Nightmare Moon, and even learn about how the rest of the main six who were living in Ponyville would come to represent the other elements. However, in order for this theory to work, Princess Luna would have to have had no knowledge about who Twilight Sparkle would become in the future, and Princess Celestia would also have to not know about her sister's transformation, as she would likely have tried to stop that from happening. But with certain pieces of information about the future, we can understand why Celestia wouldn't get directly involved with stopping Nightmare Moon's return. Why Celestia would place so much trust in her as of yet untested student. And even how she could have known that Twilight and her friends would come to represent the elements. I honestly believe that in order for all these coincidences to exist in the first two episodes of MLP, then Celestia would have to have had some kind of knowledge of events to come. I realize that these explanations are not perfect, as it would require a lot of time travel as well as a lot of trust from Celestia in what Twilight Sparkle had told her in the ancient past. And these explanations only cover most of the coincidences that ANYPony had asked others to explain, but I think that these theories about the ancient past can actually get these inconsistencies to fit together rather well. What do you think? Is it possible for Celestia to have had knowledge of these future events? Is there some other explanation as to how she could have known that Twilight Sparkle could have come upon the rest of the main six who just happened to represent the elements of harmony? I would like to hear your thoughts on these ideas, and for ANYPony, I hope that you can find a little more appreciation for these first two episodes after hearing these explanations. I am Dr. Wolf, and I look forward to hearing from you.